When I heard bullets coming over me, through my, close, both of us, just dove for the ground and laid there. And I don't know how long we laid there, short time, I would imagine. And I raised my head to turn around and look, see if he was hurt. And he was raising his head to look at me. And we both busted out laughing. Well, it was December 1963, and I was working in Rapid City I was a licensed plumber. And that's when Kennedy was assassinated, because I happened to had the pickup radio turned up, and I was listening to music, and of course it broke in, and I was getting parts, and it said when Kennedy was assassinated, and then my heart just, oh man, I don't know what's going to happen, but something's bad. And then of course I got my papers, draft papers shortly after that, and then I was scared. I'll never forget that. It said, your friends and neighbors had selected you for the armed services. I was 23 years old. And then we took all kinds of tests to see what we was qualified for. Qualified for being a plumber. The last thing we had to do was qualify with a rifle. And of course, I kind of grew up with a rifle in the country. And I got expert. We shot for probably about a week, and then they picked out the ones that they wanted. And I was one of them that they picked out. Whoever could shoot the .45 the best. And of course, I always volunteered for a lot of things. One of them was biological chemical warfare training. And then I got into what they picked a bunch of us, what they called guerrilla warfare training. That guerrilla warfare training was hard. Not many people made it through. And we set up all kinds of ambushes, and we slept wherever we was at. We always carried it was like a 75-pound backpack that carried 3 changes of clothes and whatever else, a sleeping bag. We flew back to Fort Bragg, and we wasn't there very long. That's when we got our orders to go overseas. And of course, that's when it really hit me, because I knew that I was going into war then. We went down into, I think it was Florida, somewheres, and they brought in got an LST, a war movie where they took these ships and run them right up like on the beach, and the front end opened up. That's an LST. Took that from Florida to Dominican Republic. And I happened to be one of them that was put in what you would call the basement of the ship, and give us live ammunition, and told us when it all opened up that you make a V. You come out of that ship making a V, going to the land, because we had to secure it. And of course, none of us knew we knew what we was told to do, but we didn't understand any more than that. And of course, we was under fire when we went out. That's kind of hard, but anyway, we went out and firing, and we didn't know what we were supposed to be firing at, but we was being shot at. And we got up on the beach, and evidently there wasn't very many people up there trying to hurt us, because it wasn't very long day, it was gone. It was wanting to be communism, and the other part wasn't. And they was actually really killing each other. And I would say some of the people that seen us coming didn't want us to be there. We'd be hit every night. We'd go on tours down through the town, we'd be about a group of us. go through town trying to drive out the people that was conflicting with us. We was still getting hit every night. And then we had to sometimes we was always having to take turns of being on guard at night. And of course it was very stressing being on guard duty because you could hear things and see things that wasn't there. Yeah, one of my friends came in off guard duty and there was heavy fire outside, and there was a dog sneaking up through the bushes, and of course he was hollering, halt, 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 and of course this dog didn't understand halt, 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 so he ended up shooting the dog, and then he was devastated because he shot a dog. We was right along the coast where the ocean come up, and the waves would slap on the ocean and make it just sound like somebody's walking. People don't even use half of their capabilities, of their hearing, their senses, smell. You know, there's everything that an animal has, human has, but human don't know how to use it unless they have to. One of my friends says, you know, it's funny we didn't shoot our toes off because we always slept with our sleeping bag. We didn't sleep in it. We put it over us. And our rifles was right beside us. And if you took them off safe, they made a lot of noise. So they was always off safe. So all I had to do was grab them and pull the trigger. Some of the times it wasn't a pretty sight. And at that time, back in the States, in Vietnam, when some of them guys was coming back, we was part of it. They called us women killers, baby killers. And I'm going to say, yes, we did, but we didn't mean to, because the women and some of the 12-year-old kids, or smaller, was just as bad as the growing up. Because they would put grenades into their arms and pull the pins and come at us. And most of the time they'd take young girls and load them with heavy explosive. And this particular time I was a squad leader. And we knew they told us what some of their language was. It was Spanish what it was. To tell them to stop and go back. But this one circumstances, we was pinned down, and this girl was coming, and you could see she had tears running down her cheek. And she wouldn't stop, she just kept coming. And being a squad leader, you can't just pass the buck. So you shoot them. And if they explode, then it's okay. Then if it don't, you eat it. So you see, I can talk about it. It might take me a little bit, but that was kind of the life. I can tell you what happened, but I can actually see it now. I can still see it, just like a camera. I don't know if you want me to tell you that I went through after I got out of this, when I was still in there and I got out and got home. I had a terrible time with life because I had PTSD and didn't know it. And I fought that for a lot of years until 2012. And that's where so many of these veterans, you know, it's so terrific, some of the things that happen to them, is why they're having such big troubles. So many times that if I would go into a hospital, I'd start having flashbacks. And one particular time when I got there, I opened up the ambulance door, and there was a guy sitting there, and he had a rag and it was real dark, and he was hanging on his throat like this. And I helped him out of the ambulance, the back of the ambulance, and I said, "What's the matter?" And he says, "I got shot in the throat." And he pulled that off, and the blood was pumping. So I got him to put it back on there. And of course, I got him in the clinic, and I kind of screamed at the top of my voice, and I said, "This guy's going to bleed to death." And of course, that's the last I seen him. You never see him anymore. Well, I think about myself when I was younger. I thought it was more fun to play around in high school. My social life was very important, to have fun. And now I look back at it and how stupid I was. Because I don't care who you are, what you're going to do. You need to know everything. You just can't get enough education. You just cannot. If I was younger, I would put my life, everything I could do for training, and I'd go back in because I believe in the United States. I love my United States, and I think it was quite an experience to help me with, just civilian life. I would say to somebody younger, what you get out of life is what you make it. In my life, I wore many hats, and I really enjoyed that, and I think people that don't get to do that in life is missing out on life.